Okay, we definitely want to be starting on time, not too much Miami time. So, hello everybody, welcome. Uh, my name is Nicole Vasquez. I am the COO of Refresh Miami. We are a news organization that reports on tech and startup news here in Miami. We're also a community organization that provides resources for the community to help navigate careers in tech, from a job board to events to our Miami Tech dashboard, which provides all the key metrics of the Miami Tech ecosystem. It's just like Crunchbase and PitchBook, but it's free to use. So definitely check that out. If you have any more questions about Refresh Miami and what we do for the community, go to our website, refreshmiami.com, and click on the resources page. There is a treasure trove of free resources for you. It's similar to a webinar like this with the incredible Meli, which I will have the honor of introducing very soon. Um, we are going to get started very quickly now because everyone is starting to join. And so I'm just going to give a little bit of background on the webinar. It's going to be about 35 minutes of Meli giving an incredible presentation, no doubt. And then there will be a Q&A section. So if you do have questions, please save them and put them into the chat. I will be keeping an eye on the chat. So I'll pick out any, of course, we can't get to all questions, but I'll pick out some questions to ask Meli at the end. The webinar is being recorded, so if you do have to leave early, yes, there will be a recording and we'll send it out to the group afterwards. There will be also a survey link dropped in the chat about 10 minutes before we finish. So please take I think it's 4 quick questions, very quick. Please take a moment and fill out that survey before you exit from the Zoom. It'll be very helpful for us so that we know what else we can do in the future for more webinar topics or how we can improve, and also just to hear your feedback and to hear what you thought. So without further ado, it is my honor to introduce you to Meli Chamorro, a creative director who is also the brains behind the refresh of Refresh Miami last year. So many of you have noticed that we went through a whole brand redesign last year, from our logo to our social media templates to our new website. It is bold, it is bright, it is blue, and it is beautiful. And it is all thanks to Meli. So Meli, thank you so much. It was, I will say, I will also wrap up by saying it was an honor to work with Meli and to see the creative process unfold. My joke was, sure, you can pay for a cheap logo on the fly, but you're not going to get the in-depth experience to work on your marketing messaging and making sure that your brand aligns with your long-term vision and also attracts your clients to you. So I cannot say better things about the process we had with Meli. I told her the other day that I feel that our marketing messaging is stronger in the way that I explained Refresh Miami as a result of our workshopping together before we did our refresh of Refresh. So thanks again to everybody for joining, Meli, for donating your knowledge and expertise to all of us. And I will turn it over to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Nicole. That was an awesome intro. And hi, everyone. Thanks for being here today. I'm so excited to be speaking to all of you. And again, thank you, Nicole, and the entire Refresh Miami team for having me on to give this webinar. I've been a member of Refresh Miami since its inception as an OG Miamian. So it was an honor to do the rebrand for you guys and to doing this webinar. So just to give a little background on myself, I'm a brand consultant for startups in the B2B, B2C, and SaaS space. Although before that, I worked in different advertising agencies around the world for several years, including at Ogilvy and Mather in Paris, and then later at Droga5 in New York as a creative director. During my time in advertising, I worked on both national and global campaigns for massive brands. I won several advertising awards for different campaigns across multiple brands. And I also came up with the campaign idea that led to the global rebrand for Huggies, as well as their first ever Super Bowl spot that launched the campaign, which was a really fun campaign to work on. However, even during my time in advertising, I always had a passion for startups, having founded 2 of my own startups during that time. For all the OG Miami people out there, you might remember Lemon City Tea, which was a Miami-inspired tea company that was served in over 40 restaurants, hotels, and bars in Miami. And then later, I co-founded Euphoria, which is a sexual wellness and discovery gaming app that has over 50,000 users worldwide. But it wasn't until I quit my advertising job and started working directly with startups that I discovered my niche and really where I belong. I was able to marry my passion for startups and starting a company from the ground up and the entrepreneurial spirit with my experience for doing branding with large established brands. I really love being able to help founders tell their brand story, help it figure out how to message what makes them unique and special, while also understanding the pain points that come with having a startup, because there are a lot. So let's do it. Let's talk about branding for startups. When I speak with founders, if they hear the word branding or if they think of branding, they usually think it's, a name, a logo, and a website. Anything outside of that doesn't feel like a massive priority apart from just getting the basics. So, and now you can get, excuse me, a logo on, just with an AI generator, you put up a website and you can call it a day for the time being. And, it makes sense because founders are busy. They have so much going on between product development, demo calls, finding a CTO, raising a round, then raising another round. Branding tends to get deprioritized. In their mind, it's not directly what they are selling, so they'll just say, let's do it later. But the truth is, you already have a brand, whether you realize it or not, because every business has a story. And how you tell that story is your brand. So if you have a website, if you have a deck, if you have anything that is using copy or visuals to communicate your startup, then you have a brand. And usually it's something founders put together quickly because they have to go to market. So the question isn't whether or not they have a brand, it's whether or not that brand is a good one. But when a brand is just put together to be quick and functional, then it's not working as hard for you as it should be. A good brand pitches your company when you aren't there to do it in person. It explains the what, the how, and why your startup does what it does without you needing to be there to explain it. And most founders, and I'm sure all the founders on this call, know how to pitch. You know how to go into a room full of investors and pitch your startup, pitch your vision, be able to sell them on what your company does and what it's going to be. And a good brand is able to do the same. It should be able to land a pitch without you having to be there. So most of my clients, when they come to me, their sites look similar to this. This was one of my clients, Letterhead, and this is what their site looked like before they came to work with me. And for those of you that don't know, Letterhead is a killer startup out of Miami. They are killing it right now. And this is what the site looked like before. And at the time, Letterhead was growing. They were making sales, they were doing well, but that was because their team was working hard, not because their branding was working hard for them. Their branding wasn't carrying its own weight. It wasn't working as hard as everyone on the Letterhead team. Now, if you look at the site, it doesn't look bad, right? You're probably like, oh, this looks great. It doesn't look bad. It looks professional. And it shows and talks about the product, but it doesn't really explain it well. It won't be able to land the pitch on its own. And the truth is, I knew this founder for several years before we started working together, and I had been on their site before, and I didn't actually know what Letterhead really was or what made it different, apart from it being an email software. So you look at the description, email software built for content, community, and revenue, and it sounds good, but I'm not really sure what it's saying. It's a lot of buzzwords without saying much. A memorable brand, what it does is that it rises above product, specs, and prices. But most startups, like Letterhead, were living and are living only in the space where you're talking about product, specs, and prices. And they're doing this without an overarching story. And the problem with this is that founders, they want to explain everything. They want to talk about all their amazing features, their audience, their product details, what it can do. But without a clear narrative, it's just a lot of information. And if you don't know how to communicate that with a narrative, with a brand story, then your audience can find it a bit overwhelming, confusing, or they just tend to zone out. And that's because we're constantly bombarded by every day by millions and millions of products and shiny features, all of them talking about how they're revolutionizing something. There's a revolution happening everywhere across every startup. And if you're speaking that same language, then you're not going to stand out against the million other products and features out there. You need to stand out. And the way you do that is through a good brand story. Okay, cool. So we know now that you already have a brand, whether you realize it or not, and you now know what happens when it's not a good brand story. But what makes a brand story a good one versus a bad one? A good brand story sells an idea. It sells something greater than just a product or a service. It's greater than a feature or a price. It sells an idea. Because Nike doesn't just sell shoes. They sell the idea that anyone can find their greatness. Ray-Ban doesn't just sell glasses. They sell the idea that you should never hide who you are. Liquid Death doesn't just sell water. They sell the idea that quenching your thirst is fucking badass. And I love Liquid Death as an example, because talk about coming into a crowded market. If they would have come in looking like all the other water brands and talking about clean water from the Austrian Alps, it would never have made the impact that it did, because we already know that story. So telling me that your water's from the Appalachian Alps versus, the Bavarian Alps, it doesn't make a difference to me, because it's the same language, it's the same story, it's just a feature. What they did is that they sold a new feeling when drinking water. They made it cool. They made drinking water feel different. All these brand stories, they sell something that people can resonate with, and most importantly, feel. When I'm talking about this, it's not just about new colors. It's not just about a new tagline. It's about how all these things, all these different elements work together to tell a cohesive story and clear messaging that makes your audience feel something. So if we go back to Liquid Death, they sold a different feeling of drinking water. And it wasn't just with their logo that looked more like a tattoo than a type of logo you might see on a Dasani. They didn't just do it with their messaging that also gave a different feeling, but the fact that they used a can versus a bottle, the fact that they decided to show up more at concert venues than sporting events, everything they did felt different, and it all laddered up to the idea that they were selling. And at the end of the day, you remember what you feel. And if you like what you feel, you're going to want more of it. And so it should always be the same with your startup. Your startup shouldn't just sell software, subscriptions, products, services. It needs to sell something bigger than that. But why is this important? Apart from pitching you when you're not there, what does it really achieve? When you have, what do you really get out of it? Well, when you have a good brand story, you'll start noticing that a couple things start to happen. First, it gives your team a North Star, because now your whole team is clear on how to grow the company, because they have the same clear vision and idea that you're trying to sell. So now they'll know what to prioritize on their product roadmap. So if we go to Liquid Death, if their idea is like, we want this to feel more like you're drinking a beer than just water, now the team members know, does this idea ladder into that or not? Being able to have your whole team on the same page is critical. Second, which is probably the most obvious, is that it communicates your vision clearly to your audience. But it's not just about the fact that your website now clearly communicates your messaging in a clear, simple, and consistent way, but even your team member that's doing a demo call is also going to be using the same consistent messaging. Because sometimes I've found with founders that I've worked with that they have different ideas, and so then a sales rep might be talking about it differently than someone else on the team might. And most importantly, it's a growth strategy. When you have a clear and good brand story, every marketing effort will be more effective and easier to ideate and create, because you're not starting from scratch every single time. And I'll explain this and go through this more as we go through examples, but it's important to understand that these three things are what you'll start noticing once you start working on your brand story. So if we go back to letterhead, we sold the idea of why work harder. And that messaging and brand story carried through every point of communication. So after we launched the new website with the new brand story, letterhead was seeing a 3 times conversion rate in customers booking a demo. So now the website also became a team member, pulling its own weight, bringing in sales, and turning it into a growth strategy. And then it also was a North Star, because now if they're thinking on a new feature, well, is that feature a smarter way to newsletter? It all starts trickling down, and then their marketing efforts are now way more consistent, and it always ladders to the same story. Okay, everyone's still with me? So I know it's a lot of content, but you're doing great. Just want to make sure so we don't get any glazy eyes. All right, so we know a couple things now, right? We know that every business has a brand. We now know why having a good brand story is important. And we know what makes a good brand story. So we're killing it. We're doing really, really well. But how do we actually figure out what our brand story is? How do we even start to figure out what our idea is, what feeling we're trying to evoke, what are we wanting our audience to resonate with? Well, first thing you need to do is you need to know who you are. You need to know who you are as a company, because if you don't know who you are, your audience definitely won't. And if your audience doesn't know you, they can't remember you. And that's going to make it very hard to choose you amongst all the other competitors in your space. So this is an exercise I do with all my clients because it helps us find their unique brand positioning. This is internal facing. It explains who you are. So this is work done not to show the outside world, but more for your company to align on who you are. And the truth is, you already have this information. You already know all this. You know what you do, what drives you, what matters to you. The hard part is to distill that into a central core. Because when you know so much about your product and you want to talk about everything, that's when you try to say everything all at once. You don't have an overarching narrative, and that's when people tend to go glazy-eyed. So you need to find and distill it down to a central insight and a central core. So the first thing I do with the founders that I'm working with is to have them explain their business in one sentence. And it's way harder than you think it is, because 9 out of 10 times that I do this with my founders, I ask each of them to tell me what their company does in a sentence. And every founder or every other important stakeholder that will be doing this exercise, they each say something different. And so if even explaining what your company does, you're not even on the same page, then everything just starts getting more and more and more disjointed as you start funneling down. So that's the first thing you need to do. And you need to be able to explain it in a simple, clear way with no bells and whistles. I think that's the saying. I'm not sure, but thrills, bells, and whistles. Then what we need to find is our mission statement. This is the purpose. This is the purpose for your company in the now. It's how you're putting the stake in the ground to say, this is why our company exists and like how we're doing it. And then after that, you need to look to the future, and it's your vision statement. If this is what our mission is, this is what our purpose is, this is what our ultimate vision for our company is. So all 3 of these things explains who you are. And then the brand platform, which is, a lot of people think it's just the tagline, that explains your story. So you come to this after doing the work of knowing who you are first. And this is the outward facing communication. I think it's more than a tagline, because a tagline is just something that you tack on at the end. It's a part of your brand, but it's just one piece. To me, what a brand platform does, it's what your entire messaging, your look and feel, and ethos is built off of. So right now, I'm sure a lot of people are like, well, that sounds good, but I need an example or something. And I'm like, great, here's an example. I'm also a visual learner, so let's do one to really understand what I mean by this. All right, so if we're going to do an example, first we need a startup business idea. So what about a pet business? Because pets are cool and this gift was hilarious. So let's go with that. Okay, so this is the pitch, right? This is how they're going to their investors. The name of the business is called Fetch, and it's going to be like an Instacart for pets. So it's a startup that launched offering free delivery for grain-free human-grade pet food with aspirations to grow into other pet delivery services like vet and grooming visits. So even though right now they're just focused on pet food, we need to ensure a brand story that can grow with the business as it grows and develops. So right now they're trying to raise a round, but in order to do that, they need to decrease their sales cycle time and increase annual recurring revenue by X%, right? But this is what their site looks like. You know, it's not terrible. It explains what they do, but this is what the site is, and this is what their packaging looks like. Functional. We needed to get it done fast. We'll do the nice work later, right? This was just to get it out there. But you're coming into a really crowded market. There are a lot of players in the category, both in the national and local market. So how are they going to increase sales when there are so many competitors in the market and they don't stand out to consumers at all? How is Fetch going to stand out? Well, first, let's start figuring out who Fetch is. Okay, so what the company does. What is the simple way to say this in a sentence? A delivery service that sells and delivers grain-free human-grade pet food. This is the thing that's going to be changing the most as your company changes. It's not about where you want your business to grow. It's about what your business is doing right now. Again, not putting flowery language, not trying to put aspirational tone on it. It's just like if Wikipedia wrote it, what would be the one sentence that pops up when they look up what your startup is? Okay, so now we need to figure out our mission. What's Fetch's purpose as a company in the short term? What is that stake that they're putting in the ground? Well, we need to start thinking what makes Fetch different from every other pet company. If Fetch's differentiator is simply a feature, they lost the battle. And I'll show you what I mean. Because if, say, Fetch's mission is to be the most affordable, right? Because they have free delivery. So their mission might be to provide the most affordable, healthy option and services for pet owners delivered straight to their door. Well, someone can always be cheaper. They're now in that place where they're just talking products, specs, and prices. And so now another company pops up. They're doing not only free delivery, but they're doing a 50% discount on the services that you're getting. And so now the only way you can compete with them is to be cheaper. And that's not a battle that you or your investors want to have. So what about if it's the fastest service or the healthiest? It's the same problem. Because if you're doing fastest, well, now someone's 5 minutes is doing if we don't get your order in 5 minutes, now it's free. Or if it's the healthiest, now you're getting into a battle of like who has the one healthier ingredient. And now I'm stuck looking at the labels, trying to decide what I should feed my pet after work. And I get overwhelmed and I'm just going to go to Petco because I know it. You don't want to get stuck in a battle in the weeds because that's where everyone else is. You have to rise above features and tell a bigger and emotional story. So let's think about that. Let's take a step out of what we actually do. What do pet owners actually care about? So, you know, it's normal. Pet owners do care about price. They do care about convenience. That's going to be something we talk about in messaging, but that's not the main reason why people have pets to buy cheap pet products, right? They want to do right by their fur babies. They want to be a good pet owner. So our mission is to help pet owners take better care of their pets through high quality products and services delivered straight to their door. Our mission isn't to sell human grade pet food or to offer free delivery our mission is bigger than that. Our mission is bigger than product specs and prices because now our mission is to help pet owners take better care of their pets through our products. That's just how we're doing it. But our why is so that pet owners are doing better for their pets. So now we know our mission statement, our purpose in the short term. Now we need to look towards the future. If our mission is to help pet owners take better care of their pets, then what is our ultimate vision for our business? Like, what is the dream scenario for Fetch? To make all pet owners good pet owners. So this alludes to scale, because we want to make all pet owners in every market a good pet owner. It's not about selling human-grade pet food at scale. It's about making all pet owners good pet owners, and we do that by scaling our business. It's again about that overarching story, that overarching mission. And now we know as a brand that we are teaching people how to be a good pet owner. We now become a voice of standard, that we're only offering products and services that are good for your pet, because we want you to be a good pet owner. So Fetch now has a North Star. The team is clear on how to grow Fetch, because they know every new product or every new service or category they grow into has to make a pet owner a good pet owner. So what does that mean? Like, if we're going to imagine Fetch now wants to sell products, right? Well, what products makes them a good pet owner? A choke collar or a regular collar? Human grade pet food or kibble? You know, they can even start thinking about events if they want to do promo events. What is an event that would make a pet owner a good pet owner? Maybe it's a sound safe 4th of July event, because they know their pets and dogs get freaked out with all the fireworks. You know, and say in the future they want to go into tech. Well, maybe they do a collar that lets their human know it's too hot outside, because good pet owners don't want their pets to get overheated. It's now a North Star for the team to start figuring out yes or no to how they want to move forward, how they want to scale, and how they can get to every pet owner and turn them into a good pet owner. So all the work we did, it's crucial, but it's just the beginning. You know, this is a usual timeline of how I do for my clients. So we figured out who we are, but we still need to figure out our brand story, our brand platform, which is the basis for how we're going to tell our story to the world. Okay, so this is where it gets fun and really creative. So let's think about this, right? We know that our goal is to make a pet owner a good pet owner. But what happens when a pet owner becomes a good pet owner? Well, I would know. I have a dog currently on my lap. So anytime she does something good, I'm like, good girl, you know, and they do good boy, good girl. So what would a pet tell us if we're doing right by them? Good human. So now we have a tagline, but most importantly, we have a brand platform. We're now the brand of we're a brand of standards. We are the brand pet owners who want to be good humans use, because they know everything we sell, everything we do is making them a good human, the type of good human their pet wants. Okay, so now we have our brand platform, but we still have a lot of creative work to turn that into our story that people are going to see out in the world, right? Because again, it's not just a tagline. Because what are you going to do? Just put good human everywhere with Comic Sans and we call it a day? Like, now we need to figure out, what does good human feel like? What does it look like? Because as I said, brands aren't just a tagline. So, you know, what does it sound like? Is it funny? Is it serious? Is it sad? Is it emotional? What does it look like? How are we going to stand out amongst all our competitors with our communication every single time? Well, let's think about it. Maybe because we're about humans being good humans to their pets, our visuals is only showing the pet owner, instead of our visuals showing cats and dogs like every other pet brand out there. We're doing the opposite and showing the good humans because of what they're doing. Maybe we make the brand fun because we want to have a playful personality, just like some of our pets. And so we want our messaging to tell our audience what makes a good human, because we are the good human experts. So the tagline, I could imagine it being, feeding Fido food that you would eat, good human. Human grade pet food straight to your door, Fetch. So now you can see that we're letting people know what good humans are. Like, if you buy this product, you're a good human, because we know that this is going to be good for your pet. And you now become an expert within the pet market. And the next thing we need to do is we need to think, well, is this gonna grow, right? Because we already know that Fetch has massive aspirations. So can good human grow as the company grows? So we need to pressure test it. What if we move into another pet category and service? And so now all of a sudden they're doing tank cleaning services straight to your door. Can that brand have the same look and feel? Is it easy to replicate? Do you have a clear understanding of how it'll start showing up across different channels? So here we could have, again, we're showing our good human and saying, making sure your aquatic kids have a clean room, good human. Tank cleaning services and more straight to your door. It does. It can stretch, right? And what about packaging? How should we approach packaging with our good human story? How are we going to think about doing that based on what we know our brand platform is? Well, maybe we realize that because dogs only see in shades of blue and yellow, which I just learned, that was a new piece of information. We design our packaging based on what based on the colors that our pets see. So now, all the dog line food will be in blue and yellow, and cats who only see in shades of yellow and purple and green will make it like this. Because we good humans want their pets to get excited when they see their food. So now you can start see how everything starts affecting every piece of communication you do, and it's telling a cohesive narrative. It's no longer just random pieces trying to put it together. Now everyone, anytime someone sees this, they know it's the good human brand. Okay, so right now I am sure every founder on this call is probably like, nope, too much. I don't have time for that. I don't even have time to be on this webinar, and fair. But that's why it's important to invest in a brand consultant that can help you figure all this out, because the results make an impact on your bottom line. Because if you're anything like Letterhead and my other clients, you'll start seeing higher conversion rates on your site, and you'll start improving the sales process because your consumers quickly understand your business value. Your new messaging will fine-tune your pitch deck to your investors, so your investor meetings will be more efficient and more clear and more successful. Your new look and feel packs more of a punch in your paid media assets, so you're no longer throwing away money on paid marketing efforts that have little ROI, because you're not doing random pieces that don't ladder into a bigger narrative. It's just throwing money out and not getting the return on it. And now, because Fetch finally stands out, they increased sales and had better numbers to present to investors and were able to raise their next round. So regardless if it's a startup for pets, software, hardware, or a consulting business for sustainable porta potties, the same rules apply. You need to do this every single time. Unfortunately, a lot of startups wait to do this work, when in reality, if you do this early and you do it well, it will get you where you want to go faster and more efficiently. Because if you don't do this early, you're just kicking it down the line. The symptoms are going to keep coming up again and again and again, and it's going to block you from your next round. So why not be effective from the start? And remember, everyone loves a good story, right? If you're at a dinner party, you either want to be the person with the good stories or you want to be sitting next to the person with the good stories. And good brand stories, they get funded, they get customers, and they get remembered. So thank you thank you very much to everyone. I know that was a lot of content to go through, but I'd be happy to take any questions or clarify anything in case anyone has any questions after this.
That was amazing, Meli. Thank you so much. The comments in the chat are coming through. So many positive comments already. We do have 2 questions, which I will read out. Just a reminder, everybody, I'm going to drop the survey link in the chat now. We would love to hear your feedback. Thank you for all of the great feedback you're already putting in the chat. If you have a second, please fill out the survey. All right, let's jump into the Q&A. Meli, one of the questions is, should the one sentence to explain the business be feelings-based language or Wikipedia definition dry language? Is the getting to know myself just language for me to sit with, or does the exercise directly lead to brand language on the website?
So the those three things are just internal. And the sentence of who you are, the first one of what your company does, should be not feeling based. It should just be a clear, succinct way to describe your company, so you're clear on what your company does. Then you'll start bringing in more feeling language in the mission and vision. But again, that's more for you to start realizing what really is the most important thing. What is that overarching story? So that then once you get to the brand platform, which will be part of the outward facing story, it's built on what you know about you and what's important to the company.
Very helpful. Thank you. All right, next question. How is this different for B2B slash more functional products slash business decision makers?
So I've had a lot of clients that are actually B2B, that it's not really consumer focused, but it's the same thing, because everyone, like I said, everyone wants a story. And so even if you're doing it to another business, which Letterhead it is a B2B business, is that you need to be able to explain it well. And so other businesses need to be able to understand, like, why should I go with you as a partner or go with you with your product versus another one.
Great. Okay, we have another question. What are your suggestions for how a marketing consulting business would approach defining their vision?
I think you have to think about what your audience is, who your audience is, and start figuring out what matters to them, right? Because, some marketing agencies might be focused, like, for example, I'm focused on startups. Other might be focused on a specific type of demographic or market. And so understanding what their pain points is, and then to start figuring out what that overarching story is that's going to resonate with them. So it's hard to say, like, what exactly it should be, because it has to be based on your audience and what your points are, like what what you can offer and what your strengths are.
Great. We don't have any more questions. So if anybody does have a question, please drop it in the chat now. A reminder. Oh, here's one. What have been the biggest challenges for startups to consider before working on this service?
I think, a lot of times it's that if they have that they can set aside the funds to be able to do it. Because I know sometimes it's just a matter of, like, where they are in the process. Have they been able to raise anything? So that's definitely a main concern. But I always say that it's worth the investment, because if you start working with the Fivers and trying to piecemeal it together, you're going to get into that problem where it's just feeling a bit disjointed. Then your marketing efforts are disjointed. So I would say looking at it like an investment, just like you would to any other piece, whether it's like the developers that are building your app, or seeing it as again, like a growth strategy that you're going to do for a quarter. And that usually this takes about a quarter's amount of time, at least for me. But then you're going to be seeing the massive returns after the fact. How I work with my founders is, like, I make it really easy for them because they have so much going on. So they don't really need to come with any preconceived, ideas or it's kind of a process. And it's, you start out with just explaining what you are, and then they'll help you. A brand consultant will help you get to where you need to have that effective brand story that makes sense for your needs.
Great. So there's a follow-up question to that question. How long does this process take? About how long? And how do you actually learn about what the audience wants to hear?
Yeah, so for me, this process usually takes, like I said, like a quarter, like a quarter. It can take 3 to 4 months. That usually depends on the asset deliverables they need on the end, but really more about the approval process. The more stakeholders that are going to be in that decision making, the more time it takes. But that's roughly how much, each time it's taken me. And what was the second part of the question? Sorry.
It was, how do you learn about what the audience wants to hear? and knowing that this would be different for each
Yeah,
company.
so it's a lot of research. It's a lot of learning, doing an audit of competitors, seeing what's been working, what hasn't been working. A lot of times founders also have done their own research. So usually I'll have them send me any documentation. We do a discovery where it's like deep diving to become as much of an expert as I need to be able to tell the right story of the category. And then it's just about telling that story in an interesting way, because it doesn't really matter what the company is. If it's, like I said, I've worked across different brands and different tones and different products. It's just about, is the story good? And it's just, maybe the story sounds a little more serious. Maybe this one sounds a little bit more traditional, but are you telling it in an interesting way? So it really is like, how are you communicating in an interesting way? And it just needs to make sense, obviously, for the industry. Because if you're doing, in the medical space, that's going to obviously carry a different tone than if you're doing a pet brand, for example.
Definitely. This is an interesting question and very relevant to branding, but outside of the sphere, as so many people on this call are founders or trying to get exposure for themselves personally or as a company. So what branding items, but beyond the website, are considered best currently? Business cards, QR codes to a specific link, etc.
Like what is the most effective out of that?
Yeah, besides a website, are there any unique ways that you've seen for branding? I know this is more of like a personal branding approach, but have you seen any creative ways besides just a website to brand yourself or your startup?
It depends, because it depends on what the if it's like a product or if it's a person, or it depends on what makes sense for that industry. So for example, if we go to Liquid Death, it was about where they were showing up, so being clever with the partnerships, versus I'm trying to, whereas like I've had other clients where it's like where they get the most eyes is at events. And so it's like, how do you show up at an event in a different way than other people? And so, we work and come up with like really creative ideas that in that space is going to get them noticed. So, it could be that it is a really interesting, tabletop that's different, or we're showing up in the bathrooms of an event space rather than at the table, so that even when they go, they're like, oh, I need to go check out this table. And we're telling them exactly where we are. It just depends on each specific client. So it sucks because I can't give like just a quick answer to that, because I think, like I said, every client is different. Their product is completely different. Their audience is completely different. And where they get the most, where they're going to be the most effective is also going to be different. So you can't really do a one size fit all creative, because if not, then it's just another one of the millions out there.
It makes so much sense because I remember during our workshop, you asked us questions like who is your audience? Where do you see them? Where do you interact with them? And we worked backwards from there. So our assets were for some of the banners for our in-person events, but also we do a lot on, we are, especially this year now after the refresh of refresh, starting to do a lot more on social media and in video format. So it's important for us to get templates with our branding for that, because that's that's our number one goal this year, is to continue to grow our audience and serve more people through those channels. So I remember, if we were like a consumer product goods company, it would be a lot different than in terms of the format. So yeah, so many great things. We only have time for one more question. I don't.
Oh, sorry. I just want to add one thing to that. It's like, because it's also like, for a person, it might make sense to be on TikTok, because you have if you're working for yourself and you have a specific knowledge base, and maybe there's a way for you to start, showing that in TikTok in short clips. But I'm not a fan of being like, well, you need to be on TikTok and you need to be on this. It's only if it makes sense for your skill set, what you're doing, and your startup. So go ahead. I just wanted to add that.
No, that then again makes so much sense. There's no one size fits all approach, right? And cracking the code on what is best for your company is what is the most, can be the most beneficial, hence why an expert like you come in. Okay, so we'll wrap this up. Thank you to everybody for the great questions. Thanks for everybody for filling out the survey. If you haven't, please fill it out. Appreciate everybody for being here. Meli, is there any, you have Meli's information on the screen still. We highly encourage you to reach out to Meli if you have any additional questions or are interested in working with Meli. As mentioned before, I could not give more of a glowing recommendation for the work that we did with Meli and the refresh of refresh that she helped guide us through. So any closing thoughts, Meli? People always love action items. Are there any first steps that people should take as they evaluate what's ahead for them in this?
Yeah, I would say get a Google Doc, write out those 3 things and start really figuring it out. Like, I just had a client, we're going through that process right now. And we did I had a presentation, we did the mission and all this. And then we had a discussion and we're like, this is important to me, this is important to me. But then once we put it in a mission statement format and I presented it to them, they realized that this one thing that they didn't think was that important is actually the important thing for their company. So once you start, taking away to see what's left behind, you'll start also feeling, does that feel right? Does it not? And I think this is just a really great exercise for you and your team to try to do, to start figuring out where you want to start putting those like stakes in the ground for your company and how to start, getting more focused with what you are and what you aren't. But thank you so much. Yeah.
You're a superstar. So many great comments in the chat. Reminder that we will be emailing your link to the recording tomorrow. And we'll follow up with more information. But again, thanks to everybody for joining. We know webinars are always tough to actually attend once they happen, right? So thank you to everybody for sticking with it. Clearly there's a lot of value provided. So great to see you, Meli. Thanks everybody.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. Bye.
Bye.